high-quality system is categorized as an exterior conveyor wash. The customer stays in the vehicle while being automatically guided through the glass-enclosed open air tunnel, which the vehicle is soaped, washed, polished, rinsed with spot-free water, and blown dry, all in a matter of 3 minutes. The business would have 2 employees staffing the facility throughout the day, providing general assistance to customers and overseeing the operations of the facility. There will not be a full service provided, such as the cleaning, vacuuming, or general car detailing that is typical of a full service car wash. This translates into a minimal staff needing to be on site of the facility and a reduced parking demand for employees. The project does propose to include self-serve vacuum stations that would be available for customers to use running their vehicles through the car wash and pulling into one of the designated vacuum stalls. The car wash building itself will have a restroom, as you can see on your screen, as well as an employee break room area. And then you can also see where the equipment room will be located as well. The eastern elevation will face Highway 25 bypass and is the entrance to the automated car wash. It is articulated by quick crack signature decisive yellow arches. Within the center of the arch is a location for future signage. This cutout exposes the off-white stucco of the upper tower's main facade, which is then finished with a green metal roof line. The lower portion of the tower and main body of the building will have a dark gray split face CMU, which is concrete masonry units. A water table that transitions into a taupe-colored stucco siding. The roof line will be trimmed in a metal finish painted in quick crack green. To the left of the tower is a single man door painted in backdrop with an exterior light above it. The western elevation of the building will be where the exit of the car wash is located. It is articulated by quick crack signature decisive yellow arches as well, and also proposes a future location for future signage. The main siding and body of the building for the western elevation is proposed to have dark gray split face CMU water table with a winds cap at the building's base, topped with a stucco finished wall painted in taupe. The roof line will be trimmed in green metal. To the right of the tower is a double wide man door painted in backdrop with an exterior light above it. The south elevation, which is also the side elevation of the building, will face towards the car wash's covered parking lot, which also has the vacuum parking spaces available under the canopy. Ooh. Sorry. The building will have the same CMU block trim and stucco siding. The roof line will be trimmed in a metal trellis painted in green. Above the trellis, the building transitions into an off-white stucco finish capped with a green metal roof line with linear lighting behind it. On the left of the elevation, there will be a double-wide metal man door painted in backdrop with an exterior light fixture above it. Amongst the stucco portion of the facade, there will be 2 sets of exterior flux windows for a total of 2 windows with exterior lighting in between them. The tower on the right side, the southeast corner of the building, is defined by a dark green gray veneer columns capped with a green metal facade. Between them, the facade of the building will be covered in dark gray split-face CMU with 3 exterior store frontage windows topped with a green metal trellis. Above the trellis, the tower transitions into an off-white stucco finish with space for the company's future signage. The roof line is capped with green metal. The north and side elevation of the building will face north towards Gibbs Drive. This elevation is also identical to the southern elevation, with the exception that the man door has been replaced with additional flux windows and store frontage windows. The landscaping will consist of trees, shrubs, ornamental grasses, and ground cover around the perimeter of the site, and shall be provided within the medians and the end caps of the parking lot. The applicant is proposing a landscape area of 6,001 square footage, which translates into 18.5% of the 32,390 square foot parcel. This meets and exceeds the Hollister Municipal Code's requirement for 5% landscaping. Access to the site shall be from East Park Street to the south and Gibbs Drive to the north. No direct access will come from Highway 25. 16 of the stalls that will be provided will include vacuums and will be under a metal canopy. One of the stalls will be an ADA compliant space, which also incorporates a side aisle. The standard parking is provided and separated by a landscaped median. The parking includes 2 standard stalls and 1 ADA compliant stall. An ADA compliant pedestrian path is also proposed throughout the site, connecting the adjacent property to the south. The pathway will cross the vehicle queuing lanes and mimic the direction of the drive lane by the back of the vehicle stalls, paralleling the proposed QB station, crossing the emergency vehicle road, and then the northern vehicle stalls and proposed building. In addition, the applicant is proposing to have bicycle parking. The City of Hollister's municipal code does not require the applicant to provide any. However, they are in compliance with CalGreen standards. They will be providing 4 short-term bicycle parking spots and 1 long-term bicycle parking spot. In addition, the applicant is also proposing a trash enclosure and 2 vacuum equipment enclosures that are proposed on the west of the northern vacuum stalls, and another vacuum equipment enclosure towards the west of the southern vacuum stall. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the applicant's request, receive all written and oral testimony regarding the proposal, and approve site and architectural application 2019-14, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. Are there any questions for staff? The applicant is also in the audience if you have any questions for him as well.
On the parking requirement, do we just go by off of our zoning ordinance on car wash? Is there a specific requirement based on car wash for parking, or is it just commercial? Do you recall how the number of stalls were determined?
We go by the municipal code parking requirement.
Municipal code, do you recall, is there a specific car wash use in the? It's one thing I could have looked into, but I was just curious.
So there is a car wash use parking requirement, but it's more for full service, because this one you will never need to park anywhere. Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure. They definitely exceeded if you include the vacuum parking spaces, but they have enough parking for their employees, up to 2 or 3 with the ADA stall. And then they have, it was like 16 or 17 vacuum spaces. So those aren't really parking spaces, but also the people using the car wash aren't using a parking space and like parking and then going inside somewhere. They drive through and then you park and vacuum, or you just leave. Yeah.
And if there's overflow, I guess we're relying on ambient parking for overflow.
Yeah, there are shared parking agreements throughout this development. Okay. So it's kind of hard to see on this slide, but you can kind of see where the additional parking could be if for some reason there was overflow.
Okay.
parking, they're just getting off, they're just coming in and out, there's a lot of flow. Hopefully, the business is really, successful, they'll have a lot of business and cars will be coming in now. And then there's bicycle there, so there might be some safety concerns. I'm just like curious about the thought process behind actually putting some bicycle parking there. So that was one question. And then the other, I was just, even with your explanation after what I read too, I'm still trying to visualize the flow of the cars going in and out. And I'm still, I don't know why it's not registering for me. They come in, it looks like those two main arrows at the bottom, that's where they come in. And they circle around, and in the corner they come in through that part, or they go all the way around and then enter again to the stalls.
Yeah. So we have car washes like this in the valley where I'm from, and they're pretty great. And we don't have one here, but so you would come in and you would enter one of these two lanes and you'd queue up. And I don't know if it's going to be in person, you might meet an employee here, or if it'll just be automated. You just select what car wash you want from your drive-through window, and then you drive through and you go through the car wash here, and you'll come out here. And if you want to use the vacuum, it's included in the price that you pay. So you can come in here, park, and they're like vacuum hoses. You can vacuum your car, and then you would leave here, or you can just leave. You don't have to vacuum.
And then if you vacuum, then you come back out the same way.
Yeah, you would just back out and come right back out here.
Okay.
And then as far as bicycle parking, I believe it's going to be for employees, and it's Cal Green Code.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I was going to say it is a Cal Green standard. It's not a
Right.
city standard. For the purposes of this report, I did include under the bicycle parking the language that is used for the requirements for short-term parking and long-term parking. If you would like, I can go over them more, but they are within the report, and those explain why they're a requirement for Cal Green.
Okay,
Right.
so it's for employee. Okay. And then this is the last final thought that I had. So 2 employees, is there, like, what are the security measures for like 2 employees? I'm just wondering what that, like if there would be any concerns around that, like if they were gonna get robbed or something, right? God forbid that never happens, but if that were to happen, then you have 2 employees, and how would they manage that, especially when it gets dark really early and it's dark, and it's gonna be open 7 days a week until 9 o'clock, so just, a consideration.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your time. And I appreciate the
Should we-
questions.
I'm sorry. I need to open the public hearing.
Yeah. Would you like to open the public hearing,
Um,
Mr. Chair, or
We could,
Or-
yeah, I'd like
it's
to.
up to you.
I'd rather, let me open the public hearing, unless there's any questions on the staff report.
that's fine?
I have one more,
Okay.
sorry. Just a quick, what is that extra driveway right there that says do not enter? All the way where you kind of, yeah, right there. You know how it has a, like, you can turn into the parking for the vacuums? Is that just 'cause like you're, oh, I don't wanna do this anymore, you can get out?
We'll let the applicant
Okay,
answer.
so that would be a
Yeah.
question for you, okay. That's fine.
Kevin, any questions? Okay. I will now open up the public hearing at 20 minutes after 6.
Thank
And
you.
The applicant.
My name is
care to
Efrain
speak?
Corona. I'm the Director of Development for Quick Quack Car Wash. Thank you so much for allowing us to present this tonight. I'd like to say that staff's been great to work with. They've been really helpful, and it's been a pleasant experience so far. To answer your questions, first off, the bicycles, we typically employ younger folks between the ages of 18 and probably 22. So sometimes they don't have vehicles, so we like to provide bicycle parking for them. And again, as was mentioned, it's part of the Cal Green Code, and we try and do our best to comply with all of Cal Green. The question regarding the extra lane there, so after the point of sale, sometimes cars, our conveyor is pretty versatile and can fit almost every car, but occasionally we find a car with maybe the tires are too wide or might be too low to the ground, and if we can't wash their car, we would rather have an option for them to escape and be able to exit rather than backing the whole lane out.
That was my assumption, but
Yeah.
is there gonna be like a way to keep people from going back that way? Like if they just,
So that lane is probably at most of our locations is used maybe twice a day. And usually we'll put some type of a barrier in front of it. It's usually our logo is a duck, so we might put quackles in that lane and just move him when somebody needs to use it. And then there was another question about security. So our security system's pretty advanced. We have a total of 23 cameras in this building and on the site, on the lot. The timing that we plan to be open typically in the summer hours when it's a few more daylight hours is we'll be open till 9 o'clock. But once daylight savings kicks over, then we cut it back to 7. We try and use the buddy system wherever we are. We have a minimum of 2 employees at any given time so that there's 2 people there at close and open. Sometimes there might be more. It just depends on how popular the wash is. It might require a 3rd person. But usually there's more than 1 person there, always, especially opening and closing.
Frank, it's the first time I've heard of a fully automated car wash. How many other facilities do you have in operation?
As of today, we have a total of 83 washing cars. There's 85 locations. 2 of them are shut down right now for some remodeling, but a total of 85 locations.
How long have you been in business?
We've been in business since 2004, and up until recently, we're relatively small, but have expanded our footprint here in the last 4 years.
Okay.
And as far as the type of car wash it is, if you're not familiar with it, the customer will drive onto the site. They'll enter one of our queuing lanes. Typically have 2 or 3 queuing lanes. And the reason for multiple lanes is that we use a membership program, which is very popular. So our customers can buy a monthly membership and wash as many times as they want to. The outside lane is designed for those members to come in. Eventually we'll have a license plate recognition system that will see their license plate, recognize it, and open the gate so they can just go right in without even talking to anybody if they don't want to. And then the lane that's closest to the inside, which is where our quarterback station is, where all the point of sale happens, those are for our cash customers. Although, anybody can use any lane. So after they make the purchase, they'll make the turnaround into the showroom, and somebody will direct them onto the conveyor. And it's really, we try and make it as easy as possible. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing for folks that have not used it. So there's somebody there that's walking them through every step of the way. They give them direction to put the car into neutral, hands off the wheel, hands off the brakes, and they just take a 3-minute ride through the wash and come out clean on the other end, hopefully.
It's just as simple as putting the car in neutral and the conveyor takes it
Neutral,
from there.
no brakes.
Isn't
That's what he'll
any
say.
other assistance
That's correct.
required?
And at the end, there's a sign that is telling you to wait. And once it turns green, it'll say go, and you can put it back into drive and drive off. And then afterwards, we've got our vacuums, our free vacuums for our customers. So we're, they have the option if they want to drive off or they want to use the vacuums.
I know you have to put a grease trap, and I read about the grease trap, but
Yeah, it's quite a little bit more complicated than a grease trap. We recycle approximately 92 to 94% of our water on every wash. So we're capturing 45. We have 4,500 gallons of holding capacity. That water goes through the first oil sand separator, which would be like your grease trap, and there's 2 other tanks behind that clarifying the water, and we pump that water back into the wash to be reused.
okay, so it's recirculating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were in the Sacramento market is our home market, and we were one of the first car washes to be SACBRC certified as a green car wash business.
Was it certified, LEED certified, or?
Not LEED certified, no. That would be the building.
Uh-huh.
The business itself is SACBRC.
The business itself is a green business.
Is considered
Okay.
a sustainable
But not the
business,
building.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question. What is I have a very large truck, and no one can service my truck. What is your guys' height?
It's about 7 feet plus or minus an
Okay.
inch, maybe. There's a height detector at every entry,
At the entry?
and if the team members don't feel comfortable sending a vehicle through, that's what we use the escape
Okay.
lane for. So if it's too tall, they'll know.
Okay.
But usually about 7 feet or so. We get a lot of requests for big, tall vans. It just right now we
I
don't
have a
have
very
equipment
large
to do
truck
it.
that I just washed today, and I would really not
Yeah.
do it anymore.
Well, bring it on over. Part of our process, especially in a new market like this, when we first open, we'll have our first 10 days of free. So we'll give away our first car wash to everybody that wants to come by and just see if it works and see how it works and get familiar with the product.
I ask not just for myself, but there are a lot of big trucks in this. We're ranching,
Sure.
industrial or agriculture, so a lot of us have big trucks. So I was just curious about that. So.
Part of the issue with the trucks for us sometimes is that there's a lot of trailer hitches and roll bars and things like that. Some of those things don't really do well in the wash. But the equipment that we're using is it was mentioned before, we don't use brushes. It's not our style of wash. We use soft cloth and foam. The foam is actually designed for stuff like that. If it does grab something, it'll break before it pulls something off the car. So you might have a piece of foam stuck on your trailer hitch or your roll bar instead of having it gone.
Any other questions for Mr. Corona? Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Any other speakers? Anyone else in the audience care to address the commission on item number 1? I will now close the public hearing at 6:27 or 6:28, excuse me. So it's one of the reasons I was wondering about the park, because it's kind of a different type of operation that I'm not familiar with, fully automated car wash. Sounds interesting, though. Okay, comments, any discussion on this item? Concerns? Okay, so we're looking at, we are looking at, let me find my agenda here. Item number 1. It is the site and architectural number 2019-14. What is the pleasure of the Planning Commission on item number 1?
Is there a PC resolution
Yes,
number?
I was going to say the resolution number will be 2019-40.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution approving site and architectural 2019-14, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution under PC 2019-40.
Correct.
Do I have a second on this motion?
I'll second.
Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item number 1 has been approved. Congratulations.
Congratulations on the project.
Yeah, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we go to item number 2. Minor subdivision 2018-1 and site and architectural review 2018-2. Philippe 9 LLC. The applicant is requesting a minor subdivision approval to subdivide an 8.36 acre parcel into 4 lots consisting of 3.04 acres, 4.50 acres, 0.34 acres, and 0.48 acres. The applicant is also requesting a site and architectural approval to construct approximately 220,000 square feet of indoor greenhouse buildings for a cannabis cultivation facility on existing commercial and fallow land, including on-site parking and all utility connections, drainage and landscape improvements. The applicant is also requesting approval of a mitigated negative declaration and mitigated monitoring and reporting program prepared for this project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. The project site is located at 773 San Felipe Road, south of McCloskey Road and east of San Felipe Road in the North Gateway zoning district. The location is further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel number 100-031. CEQA's mitigated negative declaration, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Members of the Planning Commission, good evening. As you indicated, Mr. Chair, the applicant is seeking tonight three approvals of a resolution for this item. One would be a minor subdivision, another would be a site and architectural review, and the third would be approval of a resolution adopting a mitigated negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and along with a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. The minor subdivision consists of the subdivision of an 8.34 acre parcel into 4 lots consisting of 3.04 acres approximately, 4.50 acres, and 2 smaller lots consisting of 0.34 and 0.48 acres. The site and architectural, because it's consisting of the improvement of a building, consists of the construction of approximately 220,000 square foot of greenhouse buildings for a cannabis cultivation facility. And the applicant is also requesting approval of a resolution as indicated adopting a mitigated negative declaration and monitoring and reporting program pursuant to CEQA prepared for the project. The City of Hollister circulated a mitigated negative declaration for public review and also to the city's responsible agencies from April 12, 2019 all the way through May 13, 2019. And the City of Hollister received 3 letters from state and local agencies. When a mitigated negative declaration is prepared, formal written responses to comments on a mitigated neg deck are not required by CEQA. However, in the interest of full disclosure in cooperation with responsible agencies and the public, responses are addressed as part of the record. In addition to the letters and comments attached in the packets, the City of Hollister received a letter from the State Clearinghouse dated May 14, 2019, indicating that the City of Hollister has complied with the State Clearinghouse review requirements pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. The project site is located at 773 San Felipe Road. It's actually south, it's along San Felipe Road, but to the east between McCloskey and Wright Road to the north, and between the intersection of Highway 25 bypass and San Felipe to the south. It's about 400 feet from the intersection of McCloskey and San Felipe. The existing uses that are surrounding the site are essentially an automotive repair use to the south, along with vacant parcels to the south as well, and then row crops to the east, and industrial uses to the north. And adjacent to the site, as indicated on the plans and on the screen to the west, there is a lot that was where a site and architectural was previously approved in April, approximately 5 months ago, by the Planning Commission for a dispensary, for a site of a future dispensary. And at its April 11, 2019 Planning Commission meeting, the applicant received unanimous approval by the City of Hollister Planning Commission on the adoption of resolution number 2019-16, approving site and architectural review 2018-14 for the construction of a 2,400 square foot commercial cannabis dispensary building at 773 San Felipe Road, which would be adjacent to the west of the site and would be included as part of the overall operations of the facility. The building on the top of the screen is the approved dispensary building. The lot that's outlined in blue on the screen is the cannabis dispensary lot, and it's a separate lot from the outlined lot in red, which is the current project site that we're currently considering for the minor subdivision and site and architectural and mitigative negative declaration. As indicated, the lots would be split into one 3.04 acre lot, which is identified as parcel A, and that would be for an indoor greenhouse building cultivation facility. Parcel B as well, 4.50 acres, and parcel C and D would serve as a stormwater detention basin. Those would be smaller lots. The access to the sites would be via San Felipe Road, and vehicles would essentially come into San Felipe Road through the approved but not yet built dispensary site and head eastbound to parcel A and parcel B through two locations. Up to the north of the site, there would be a gate, and on the south of the site, there would be another gate as well to be able to access to the east. And only authorized personnel and authorized vehicles would be able to access the eastern part of the site. And all those security measures would be actually included within the cannabis use permit that the applicant would also be working with on the City of Hollister, with the Hollister Police Department, as well with our cannabis affairs manager, to make sure that gets adopted by the City Council before any operation takes place. Vehicles will be able to drive to the east only authorized. And between the dispensary site and parcel A, there will be a wrought iron fence, 2 gates as mentioned, and there will also be a 15-foot wide landscape buffer. And we can get into the landscape details in a little bit with the landscape plan. To the south of parcel A, there would be 10 parking spaces, a trash enclosure, and some bicycle parking spaces as well. East of parcel A would be parcel B, and parcel B would consist of 4.5 acres, and out of the 4.5 acres, 3.04 acres would be for cannabis greenhouses. And the greenhouse setback between parcel A and parcel B, as you can see in the middle of the screen, would be approximately 60 feet. And so the open space area between parcel A and B, and along the south and along the north, would be for right-of-way purposes, for vehicles to be able to drive through, authorized vehicles to be able to drive through. And along the south of parcel B, there would be 12 parking spaces and an additional trash enclosure as well. Before I get to the next slide, parcel C and parcel D, as indicated, are going to be part of the stormwater basin requirements. And I just want to make sure that I include, for the record, there is a condition of approval that indicates that per sheet C 1.1, conceptual grading and drainage plan, the basin is designed to not hold standing water after storm events, as to not attract birds. Basin pumps shall be sized and programmed accordingly to drain within 24 hours. And due to the proximity of this site to the Hollister Municipal Airport, the requirement is that if there's going to be any type of bioswales, storm drainage areas, that they really should drain within 24 hours as to not attract birds, because that can be a potential hazard for aircraft. The site would contain approximately 220,000 square feet of indoor greenhouse buildings for cannabis cultivation. The greenhouses would have a polycarbonate exterior with an opaque white color. No hoop houses would be allowed. I know that in other agricultural types of uses, hoop houses would be permissible, but not within the cannabis cultivation ordinance. The greenhouses would have ridge vents on the roof, which would be open if air needs to escape. And the greenhouses would be secured on a permanent foundation as well. The plans also propose some corrugated metal siding. A condition of approval for the site and architectural resolution would require a different type of siding as opposed to corrugated metal, such as concrete tilt-up or stucco or other type instead of the corrugated metal for the exterior of the greenhouses, along with the allowable polycarbonate exterior. And I want to indicate that a few months ago, the city manager, along with the fire chief and the building official, along with planning staff and the cannabis affairs manager, were able to take a field trip to the city of Greenfield. City of Greenfield currently has a cultivation site in operation. And so we went out there to take a look and see how they're doing and to take a look at their facilities. And some of the things that we noticed is that they also have kind of greenhouses with that polycarbonate exterior, similar to what you see on the site, on the pictures there. Also, the pictures show ridge vents on the roof, which could be open if air needs to escape. Some of the area was under construction, and as you can see, they were preparing the footings for the actual greenhouses, and so this would be a similar type of construction where we would require a foundation on the greenhouses for them to be secured as well. This is a close-up picture of the polycarbonate material in the city of Greenfield. The interior of the greenhouses also, as you can see on picture A and B, the ceiling, for example, you see that there are some lamps and some shade cloths. What was explained to us is that the plants require a certain amount of hours for lighting and a certain amount of hours where it needs to be dark, and so therefore the shade cloth, it can be automated to where it can close when needed and open to provide for natural lighting to come in as well. See the picture in picture C basically entails an indoor irrigation system and piping, which also includes like a water line as well as other pipes required for indoor irrigation as well. The site operation would be 24 hours a day, ran by 3 shifts with approximately 20 employees per shift. According to the mitigative negative declaration prepared for the project, page 2-68, the work shifts will begin mostly in off-peak traffic times. Peak times are considered to be in the morning, for example, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., and in the afternoons, approximately 2:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The off-peak time work shifts are proposed to be from the shifts that are proposed by the applicant are noon to 8 p.m., 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., and 4 a.m. to noon. These work shifts will remove employee and delivery trips from peak hour periods, and also all delivery and product transportation will be restricted to the hours of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., also mostly outside of the peak hours, normal daily activity for deliveries. And product transportation will encompass a total of 28 to 30 vehicle trips in a 24-hour period. The site proposes an 8% landscape within the site, 64 trees in total, approximately. They would be fruitless olive, holy oak, and sweet bay, and multiple low shrubs, including French lavender and others. There would be approximately 9 trees along the west of parcel A, along the greenhouses along parcel A, which would serve as a separation, as a landscape separation from the dispensary site to the greenhouses. There would also be 25 trees along the northern property line, 9 trees along the eastern property line, and 23 trees along the southern property line, along with the multiple shrubs. The 8% landscaping that's being proposed on the site, it exceeds the minimum requirement of 5% per the City of Hollister Ordinance Section 17.08.020. Prior to finalizing staff's presentation, we would kindly like to request your attention to mitigation measure number 12 in the screen, which reads as follows. Light and glare. Final project design shall include and demonstrate the following. Square number 1, grow lights shall face downward and be shielded to prevent direct upward lighting. Square number 2, lighting shall not strobe or flash. And square number 3, roofing materials shall be toned or matted to prevent reflective glare. A recommendation would be to update the third square to indicate as follows. Building roofing materials along with building orientation shall be submitted to the Airport Land Use Commission and Federal Aviation Administration to ensure compliance with reflective glare standards. And the reason for this is that in consultation with ALEC staff, the Airport Land Use Commission, ALEC would request that the applicant submit Form 7460-1, which is a notice of proposed construction or alteration, to the FAA. And upon response from the FAA, the applicant should submit to the ALEC the determination of no hazard from the FAA. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the applicant's request, receive all written and oral testimony regarding the proposal, and approve the following. 1, a resolution adopting the mitigative negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, with the amendment to mitigation measure 12 to replace the phrase, quote, roofing materials should be toned or matted to prevent reflective glare, unquote, with the phrase, quote, building roofing materials along with building orientation shall be submitted to the Airport Land Use Commission and the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure compliance with reflective glare standards, unquote. 2, approve minor subdivision number 2018-1, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. And 3, approve site and architectural review application number 2018-2, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. At this point, we would be happy to take any questions, and also the applicant and the property owners are here to address any questions as well as our Cannabis Affairs Manager from the City of Hollister. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. I do have some
welcome.
questions.
Sure.
Number one is that I noticed that with the bioswale, we've been talking about underwater storage for a lot of these projects. So in this case, in this particular example, we're going with a bioswale. What's the threshold for that? I mean, why is it not underwater storage? That's one question. I think Danny probably could answer that one.
Yeah, Danny
I just
Danny
wanna
could
make sure
Danny
that
could
we
answer
have
that.
an-
He's
we have
done.
an even
But the
playing field
discretion
on
is
this
with the city
requirement.
engineer. And as a reminder, the if the 24-hour requirement for the drainage of the pond is not met, then the city can change that to have it to be underground. But Danny could.
But they met their open space requirement.
Correct. Correct.
So there's no need that, if they can prove that the bioswale is a feasible way to deal with stormwater management, there won't be a problem. If the ponds do not drain within a reasonable time, with some type of amended soil or something to get that water to percolate, the city engineer can require that be placed underground in a pipe.
Okay, so there's depending on the perk test, perk rate then?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll review that all when the improvement plans.
Okay. And also, I noticed that with the polycarbonate material, I'm not sure what the function of that is. Is it, because you're enclosing some areas there. Is this just, can you clarify what the function of the polycarbonate siding material is?
Yeah, it's very detailed process. I think that would probably be a question for the applicant if that's okay with the commission, because the function of what
I'm
it
not
is
clear
inside
about
it,
that.
we were really impressed of everything that goes in within the actual greenhouse space.
Mhm.
And from what we were told and what we saw when we took that tour, everything has its purpose, as you mentioned. So I think it would probably be
Yeah, not
best
clear about
once
the
you open the
purpose.
public, if it's okay, for them to address.
The third question I have is that I noticed that some of the areas get hot. When it went through DRC, were there any concerns from the fire department in terms of automatic fire sprinkler
Yes.
requirements?
Yes, absolutely. The fire department is, as part of the conditions of approval, the fire department wants to make sure that that's addressed. Fire sprinkler requirements and fire alarm requirements be addressed. I know in my conversations with the fire chief, we understand that different sites in other areas have caught on fire, and so that'll be addressed as part of the conditions of approval with the fire department for those requirements.
Okay.
Yes.
And my final question is the future right-of-way that goes to Kirkpatrick Court. Is the intention to eventually connect that to McCloskey Road? Is that
There is an easement
plan
that
on
that would have that as an option to connect. And at first, when we first got the preliminary or conceptual plan submitted to the city, that was our first response, that it should connect. However, because of the nature of the business, the cannabis use business, and strong security measures that the City of Hollister has, and particularly with the City of Hollister Police Department, the recommendation was not to connect it, not to have a public right-of-way through the parcel, and at this point not have that connect. However, the requirement was that space shall still remain open in case in the future, if that use does go away, then there can still be the potential of a road traversing the project site.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the staff report?
Got two. I just want to clarify. I keep hearing for the acreage on the things. One of them says .32 and one says .34 for the same. I just wanted to clarify which one it is, because on the staff report it's saying .32, but on my agenda and what you're saying is .34. So I just wanted to get a clarification.
It's an approximate. That's a good
Okay.
question, Commissioner Johnson. It's an approximate. When it gets submitted to the building department, we'll have those specific numbers, but it's between those
I just
two.
want to make
Yeah.
sure. And then my other one is
Absolutely.
I also wanted to say that I met with the applicants.
Oh, good.
And we didn't discuss this one per se, but I did meet with them and we somewhat talked about it, but I also just wanted to full disclosure that I did meet with them.
Oh,
I think I
glad you
disclosed that at the special meeting too also, that I did meet, I think it was June 20th.
Good.
for
Thank you for
information
that.
only. I think that was disclosed. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I will also disclose that I had a phone call yesterday with Mr. Coates discussing Felipe 9, Wright 13, and Coates Briggs 17.
Great.
Any other comments or questions on the staff report? Okay, I guess no other comments or questions. We'll open the public hearing now at 7 minutes to 7. Have speaker cards.
Yes, Mr. Joe Tanasha.
Good evening, Commission. Joe Tanasha. I'm the property owner to the east and to the south. So I have both parcels there. I went and met with Ms. Kelly and Mr. Prado, but I thought I'd come here and make sure I was on the record. I just want to make sure whatever fencing they have is, can't see through it, number one. You know, cyclone last in it. Something came up today I didn't realize until it came up there. The trees. Sure would be nice if they planted trees that didn't have flowers or nuts or anything because of food safety issues for my crops on the east side. Hope that air ventilation cuts down on the smell. But my biggest question is, I have the piece to the south for employee housing, and I have part of the piece to the east is also in the north gate, and that was one of the reasons I tied it up, was to put employee housing in. And I know the setback, I talked to Mr. Prado, is 150 feet for housing, and it's for single family housing. And I understand north gate, this thing's gonna have approximately 60 feet all the way around the inside. And I talked to somebody later today, and I found it kind of strange that it could have employee housing closer than you would have single-family dwellings. I can put it right up to whatever the setback is, 8 feet from the fence, 6 feet, whatever's legal. So a little concerned about that because I have labor issues like everybody else in agriculture. And I would have liked to seen them use Kirkpatrick because I just don't like any more traffic on San Felipe. Moving equipment's hard enough in this town, in this area. But anyhow, those were my concerns. I want to make sure they're on the record. If you have any questions, answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Tanaska?
Yeah, Joe.
Joe.
No? Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Is the applicant?
Gary Coates
applicant,
is the
please address the commission.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Gary Coates here on behalf of the project that's before you. Also, we have Mr. Orozco in the audience, Patrick Orozco, and also Matt is here this evening, Matt Knorr, who is also with Orozco, the owners of the project site. I'm not going to go through all of the issues because your staff has done a very, very good job. I want to thank them for all of the hard work. As you can imagine, we're dealing with over 80 conditions with this project, both federal, local, state, and then all environmental issues as well. So this has been a very long process, but one I think that has been very successfully completed. We have no issues with the recommendations that are made by staff. We concur with all of those findings. We've been very involved in looking at them, making sure we can qualify, making sure we can meet those requirements. One thing that I did want to, just as a clarification, this site is not just a cultivation, is not just a grow site for cannabis products. It really also involves manufacturing, it involves packaging, distribution. The whole gamut works within the building itself so that we can have a full one-stop type shop area where you can actually grow, manufacture, study, package, and then ship out. So it's all done in one place, that you're not going with more traffic in and out of the area. So I just wanted you to be aware of that process. Building material wise, I'm going to ask Mr. Orozco to come up and address that question for you with respect to the siding, et cetera, because he has more of a knowledge of that than I do. The fencing requirements that we have out there, our fencing requirements, as you can imagine, are safety requirements as part of our safety plan, which also deals with the PD. And so we're going to be following the safety requirements with respect to fencing and landscaping. Landscaping, I think the point was well mentioned. We'll go back and look at other types of trees or whatever, work with staff to make sure that we don't have any kinds of flowering or nut trees or anything of that. We don't want to impose on anyone in that area. So the comment, I think, is well said and well intended. We'll follow that and work with staff to make sure that that does not create a problem. The project up front, as you know, is the AMBAM dispensary project. That has on-site improvement plans in the city for review. Building plans will be submitted shortly, probably next week, for the building program. We're working in conjunction with them and with the Orozco group, this Felipe 9 project, so it's very, very in tune going through the entire process. The storm drainage issue, I think Mr. Hillstock has mentioned, we would concur with him that whatever the requirement is, we've looked at being able to meet that requirement of not having standing water for the 24-hour period because of the potential bird migration, landing, and creating problems with the fly patterns. So we are doing that. So we will continue to work with your staff on that. And I think with that, Mr. Chairman, I won't go through every single issue. Your staff has done a very good job with that. I'm happy to answer questions, and then Mr. Orozco can get up and discuss the building material question. If there's anything you have, please feel free to ask questions.
Well, regarding, I do have a question regarding the fencing.
Yes.
It's really not described and specifically in specific detail what type of fencing. Can you elaborate on what the fencing
There is a
would be?
condition by the staff in there that requires us to put a wrought iron fencing, and it is a see-through fencing. And frankly, from the PD's point of view, that's something that's critical to be able to have eyes on, if you will, the site. So we do have that. Goes back 100 feet, is it, Abraham?
Approximately between the dispensary and Lot A, and yes.
So there is.
Iron with the 4-inch John Center pickets?
Yes, yes, and it goes back 100 feet off the sides, and then from that it is a chain link fence that goes back on the remainder that we have to do in order, and there's a double containment, so to speak, area for people coming on site that have to pull in, go through registration before they get in, because it's a locked site. This is not a public facility that people can drive into this
The police
facility.
department did request that it would be a see-through type fence?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a question too. More of an ask to speak to. So one of the concerns that was raised by the speaker about the smell,
Mhm.
and I remember reading in the report that it was either in the NMD, mitigated negative impact, whatever, that it was either minimal or there was no impact. And that there was some way to like kind of contain it within the structures, or some other way to mitigate that, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, because obviously that's gonna be a concern for the neighbors, and it was brought up earlier. So I wonder if you could speak to that, because it seemed like that was covered in the report, and I think it's important for the public to know that that's gonna be important for people that are in that area.
Understand. And we have there are state standards that we have to comply with in order with odor questions that come off the site that we have to deal with. We're right now looking at a variety of different options. To be very honest with you, we don't know today whether we're going to use option A, B, or C. We know we have to comply with the state standard for minimizing or eliminating odor that comes off. But there may be, by the time we build this, which to go through planning, to go through our site building permits and everything, it'll be a good year from now to go through. And if something new comes along that's, quote, the better mousetrap, we're going to incorporate that. But we do have circulating systems. We do have, they have the ability to infuse other odors within there that are masking odors to help with anything coming off. So there are different ways to do it. We're not sure, to be very honest with you, we're not sure which is the best way. We want to try to use the most up-to-date, the most modern, because this is a brand new from the ground up building. This is not a retrofit where you try to piece things together. We can choose the best system available, and that's our intent. So to give you the exact type of system, no. To tell you that we have to comply with state standards, yes, we do. Secondly, we do look at possibly infusion of different scent packages in order to reduce that smell. That is an effective way. That's used down in Greenfield, as your staff has seen. They use that program down there. Plus also then a filtering system that is used on the site. So I hope that answers. I can't, as I say, tell you the name of the system, but we know several that we're looking at.
I think the important thing is that that's an important consideration
Yes.
as you're moving forward in the design, and hopefully that'll be something that we'll just keep on top of. And I also think that the comment about the traffic, I mean, the one thing that I kind of thought of, but I know that it was also covered in the report, was that the impact of the traffic. Again, it was something that it was either minimal or it wasn't going to be a big. There was a way to mitigate whatever impact there would be, but the traffic with the dispensary, plus now the greenhouses, and then the trucks that are coming in. So all of that, I'm assuming that all of that was considered in its totality, not just simply on this one isolated thing, especially with the comment that the gentleman said earlier about how it's already difficult for him to navigate that with his farm equipment and whatever other trucks that he uses.
Sure.
I just wondered, just to make sure that that was also considered, because I think even though they won't be doing any deliveries during the peak traffic hours, there's business that occurs during the day, right? 8 to 5, that's when other things are happening. The dispensary will be open, so customers will be coming in and out of that. So I'm hoping that that's all being taken in a totality, not just in a silo, right?
That's a good point, Commissioner Stevens. That's definitely, we want to make sure that we mitigate as best as possible the traffic trips and vehicle trips overall. And so, yeah, that was one of the reasons. And actually, the applicant is who suggested that to staff, that they would do a staggering not only shift schedule but also delivery schedule as well, to try to minimize as best as possible any traffic impacts that could potentially result from this, from the overall operations. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the comments about the odor and the circulating system, so have you gotten to the point where you're engineered the mechanical ventilation system? There's going to be a mechanical ventilation system for all the greenhouses? Or
The entire project, and no, we have not gotten to that
It's a
point yet.
A closed system?
Maybe have Patrick answer. He would know a little more about that than I.
Good evening, Chairperson and members of the Commission. You'll have to apologize, I got a bit of a cold here. So a couple questions were raised regarding the odor mitigation, regarding screening, regarding a balancing act of security, eyes on access in terms of visual access for the benefit of the police department. the most accurate answer is that these are questions that will be resolved in conjunction with our building permit. All of these are engineering related questions that are mitigatable. I know we are landlords. Our background is in commercial real estate, building chiefly shopping centers, large office complexes. And so we look at this challenge very similarly as does the city, in that we are long-term landlords. The city is, of course, the longest-term landlord, but our goal with operators is essentially be the devil's advocate and think about what could go wrong, think about how neighbors could be negatively affected, and do our best to make sure that we're not skimping on any of these solutions. So specifically with regard to screening, I'd be more than happy to create, an opaque fencing system that works with guidance of the police department on certain portions of the site. They're arguably more secure, namely the sites, the south boundary of the site, the east boundary of the site, and arguably the north boundary of the site. The portion that is essentially public facing is in fact the area that shares its entrance with the dispensary. All that being said, all of the operations that occur past that wrought iron fence are basically business to business. It's a private function that has literally no opportunity for the public to find their way in without, navigating controlled entrance and security features. So I'm more than happy to meet with my neighbors. We're always sympathetic to concerns. Hadn't even thought about the flowering trees and the droppings and so forth as they might affect, neighboring agricultural functions, but that's a real easy one that we can accommodate. The concerns regarding proximity to residential are something that, I've studied personally because I was worried about it myself. Does this make sense? Does it fit? Is there precedent? And what I found is that surprisingly, these type of facilities are more common in highly dense areas with surrounding residential than one would expect, because they are typically found in industrial areas versus agricultural areas. And so the fact that we've got, surrounding agriculture here is a positive, but certainly sensitivity to things like smell, odor migration are issues that we will make sure to address acutely. Some of the specific solutions, as Gary indicated, are carbon filtration. That's probably, it's really a percentage of odor. So if you started with 100%, the carbon filtration might knock it down to 80. The positive pressure or negative pressure of the greenhouses that allow air to escape or not to escape while balancing the temperature inside the greenhouse is something that engineers can manage. And then that last little whiff of things, in fact, it's something as simple, and I someone said this, and I was like, really? But they literally Febreze the air. It's not a Febreze, but it's the same general property, and that might sound laughable, but when you're talking about that last remaining percentage and the fact that these buildings are set back by a reasonable period of time or a reasonable distance of 60 feet, that odor at a height that's quite high relative to someone's nose walking around on the site. These are all combined effects that, conspire to eliminate the problems that, proximity issues could potentially have. But it's the most accurate way of describing it is that we will not skimp and hire the best team of engineers to navigate all the potential impacts. And that's the one thing I wanted to get up and pledge that across the mitigation measures, if it's not written, we'll do it anyway. We have, as a company, literally never done just one project in a community. Every single community we've ever built a project in, we've been invited back to build a follow-up project because we follow through on what we say we're going to do. So I appreciate you considering this particular use in this location, and certainly you got my commitment to meet with any neighbor that would like to sit down and talk about what it means to be a good neighbor on a long-term basis.
Thank you for explaining that to us. Just looking at the interior pictures here, you got metal trusses, and I mentioned the polycarbonate material. Some of the areas need to be enclosed. Am I correct to say that the polycarbonate siding has a functional and an aesthetic purpose?
Yeah. Here again, it's somewhat of an engineering issue. These are componentized systems that are lightweight, and they go up quite quickly by comparison with a traditional building. If you can imagine kind of a rector set with a roof on it and walls. Certain portions of the building are set up to invite a certain measured amount of light in, inclusive of a semi-transparent or fully opaque, polycarbonate wall. Some walls will want to be, metal panels. Certainly can navigate around not having corrugated metal. And then if there are facades that have a more public presence that need to be embellished, perfectly fine with that as well. But you are correct that they do have a functional property, and I'd be lying to you to tell you exactly what that is, because I'm not a cannabis cultivator. I'm a landlord that builds good buildings. So,
but as a planning commissioner, one of the things I get concerned about sometimes is the mechanical ventilation system. Have you gone into the engineering aspect of the project?
Yeah, in fact, we were on the phone with a firm yesterday that is based in Bend, Oregon, where cannabis has been prolific they got a couple year head start on us, and so they've realized this particular MEP engineer does mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, the whole system. They have jumped ship from traditional building systems in order to specialize in specifically cannabis buildings, and they've done over 100 facilities. They have a sister company, Axiom Engineers, that's based in Monterey, so they have a presence locally and are very accessible. But these are fairly highly specialized systems, essentially purpose-built buildings for a very acute function, versus a generalized warehouse that can accommodate a variety of different prospective uses.
When on these systems, because you have a nice clean look on the exterior, are all the ductwork, is all that enclosed within the buildings?
Many times the roofs are not load bearing because you want to essentially not obstruct the light from coming in. It's
situated is it situated, the mechanical equipment situated inside the building or outside the building?
Many times they are on outside of the building, and they're basically sucking the air, actually pushing the air in from the walls. There are different humidification, cooling systems that basically control the air temperature and the level of moisture in the air. So as I've seen them, they essentially oftentimes live on the sides of the building with big screens that I wouldn't look at as saying, okay, that's an AC unit. It looks like a screen on a wall. So most of the systems, as I understand, live on the ground and sit adjoining a building in order to push the air from side to side.
I just want to make sure that if it's outside the building, I want to make sure that it's going to be screened. Add a condition if we need to.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question in regards to what is the life expectancy of the buildings?
It's a very good question. It's actually the reason why we're here. So our foray into commercial real estate for cannabis started in 2016 when we went in Salinas and bought a defunct greenhouse that was built some 30 years ago for the cut flower industry. And so those buildings work well enough for this particular function. What we have an opportunity to do here is custom tailor the actual building for the specific use. And in those 20 years that these things have been built, the systems that have been built to support the roof, the walls, are vastly more robust, and they are specifically engineered such that if 50 years from now we have plexiglass on the roof that ends up yellowing, you literally pull the panel out and replace it in order that the integrity of the building be preserved. We've done that on the older facilities that are already 35 years in, and it's amazing how new they look once you're done, and because the aluminum truss system is not something that's really very, very visual. So they do have a shorter useful life than, say, a concrete tilt-up building per se, but it is normal that you would essentially depreciate them and then build into your budget a plan to replace them, decades later, in terms of the wall systems and the roofs.
And then, in regards to the trip to Greenfield, what is being done? Maybe it's the same system, or something's being done different here, versus what Greenfield did for the Odor.
We don't have any holdings in Greenfield, so I'm not familiar with the project that they may have visited. I will tell you that the projects built in Greenfield, commenced about 2 years ago. They were one of the first movers in California, so they maybe even 3 years ago. And one of the benefits that Gary highlighted is that 3 years ago there were literally 0 buildings for this particular function because it was fully illegal. And so no buildings had actually been custom built and designed for the function. So the first generation of these buildings effectively were adapted, tomato, leafy greens, orchid based systems, whereas now firms like the MEP engineer have actually are innovating and developing specifically for this building. So that's a long way of saying I don't know, but the solutions since those projects have been built have been tested and refined pretty significantly. So wherever we'll likely be looking to make finite decisions on odor mitigation, say 6 months from now. So by that point in time, the industry will have existed across multiple geographies in California for 3.5 years. And just like any other new industry, this one is going gangbusters, and a lot of folks like ourselves that don't have any relationship with the plant that are trying to adapt their skill set laterally to a new industry. Many engineers are doing the same thing with products to solve these types of problems.
Going back to the building aesthetics, we talked about the siding material. The greenhouses themselves, all the repetition, I pre-engineered. They're going to be all built.
Yes, correct.
Brought to site, all assembled.
These buildings are certainly pre-engineered. You do buy them systematized, so they'll show up and they'll be pre-cut, and they kind of, erector set, adult size erector set in terms of how they go together. The foundation systems, a lot of them, the most prolific maker of them is in Holland. These are where they can't control, how many sunny days they have, and they actually have to extend the daylight hours because of light properties up there. But they're domestic products. There's products built in Holland, and now in China. So there's sorry, that was a long answer.
Metal frame with kind of acrylic material, my guess?
There's a pretty wide spectrum of type and quality, and what this specific building will end up being, in some part, relies upon the tenant that we secure. These are buildings that we will essentially build to suit, and so I'd use the analogy that's familiar to me: Target or Costco. Both have walls, both have exiting requirements, both have sales floors, both have back stock rooms, but how much is committed to a back stock room, how they circulate the people through the area, how tall the interiors are, what type of racking systems they have. Those are decisions that are many times responsive to the program of an operator. And in this case, as Gary pointed out, the program very much may change in terms of how much this particular operator has a need for manufacturing space versus cultivation space. And so portions of this building may, essentially be very, very similar to many of the other industrial buildings that you have, because they end up being a manufacturing function versus specifically a greenhouse function.
The reason I'm asking is with Commissioner Munster's concerns about sustainability with the greenhouse component, I'd like to, I don't know, we can't ensure the sustainability, but I'm just trying to find out more information about it.
Yeah.
If I can
Kind
just
of what I was getting at with the question is the life expectancy of the buildings. Is if this industry changes and there's not a demand for it, is there an alternative use for this building, or is it purely just a greenhouse? Can it be used for some other use?
Yeah, it's a perfect question. It's the question that, going into this, I asked myself, and in truth, controlled environments where light is able to penetrate and you're able to kind of control the irrigation systems, they will be very, very successful in growing a variety of different crops. No one in their right mind would spend the money to put them up for tomatoes or, a lower margin, more conventional product like that. But one of the opportunities for folks in the space that, like myself, is to allow the initial occupant to basically pay off the building, so that then we can afford a backup strategy that will accommodate, more conventional uses, that serve other aspects of agriculture, or, a variety of different functions. These buildings are fairly wide, span fairly high, and they will, as Abraham pointed out, they will have, concrete floors. So there are a variety of different functions that, this what is effectively large and expensive space can accommodate for, a number of different industries. But you can drive through them. I mean, they're basically big, tall, wide span buildings that just happen to have a transparent roof, which is a componentized system such that you can actually take the transparent roof off, replace it with a insulated panel, and it will function just like a metal butler building. So there, we are actually thinking about those specific questions: is what happens if, the new industry that we're all investing in changes. The one thing that I would say as a qualifying factor is that we will be the last men standing, because this is the best mousetrap for this particular use by comparison with adapted facilities that were built for other functions and are basically being kind of jerry-rigged, if you will, to accommodate a use. These buildings will be the most efficient for the function that they're intended for, which differs from, the property, for example, that I own in the Salinas Valley, which I'm selling because of that very concern.
Because the building's going to have some flexibility.
Yeah, and I mean, the last remark that you made was one of my questions that I was going to ask is in regards to the roof and stating that you can change out the roof for a solid.
Yeah.
Gives it additional usage.
Okay.
I've got no other questions.
Any other questions? Any questions? Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
It's Patrick.
Anyone else care to address the commission on item number 2? I will close the public hearing now at 7:26. Comments?
Question to the staff in regards to the trees. Is there, from the list that is approved, is there a list of trees that are flower producing or nut producing?
Yeah, definitely we can work with that list that we have and work with the applicant and take into consideration Mr. Tanasha's requirements in regards to the state requirements that he must meet in regards to his current land use and it sounds like Mr. Patrick Orozco and team are willing to help with that as well. So
We can make that into a condition.
if you'd like, we can certainly indicate that, but it is on the record and we can move forward with that. But if you'd like to make it into a condition, absolutely, that's fine.
So on this item number 2, we need 3 separate motions.
It's 3 separate motions, Mr. Chair. The first one, we would request that they would be in order of what's required. The first one would be for the adoption of the mitigative negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, as indicated in number 1. With the staff is requesting that the change to the mitigation measure 12, as mentioned, regarding ALEC and FAA, be also included. Resolution number 2 is the minor subdivision, and resolution number 3 would be the site and architectural.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I entertain a motion on the mitigated negative declaration and the monitoring of the mitigated neg deck.
I'll make the motion to a resolution adopting the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program.
With the revision to
With the amendment to mitigation measure 12 to replace the phrase roofing materials shall be toned or matted to prevent reflective glare with the phrase, quote, building/roofing materials along with building orientation shall be submitted to the Airport Land Use Commission and the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure compliance with reflective glare standards.
Do you have a second on that motion?
Second that.
I have a motion. Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mitigated negative declaration and the mitigated monitoring resolution has been approved. Now we go to the minor subdivision 2018-1. Do you have a motion on that?
Figured Kevin was the one on that. I'll make the motion for minor subdivision number 2018-6, subject to the finding conditions contained in the draft resolution PC
Resolution 2019-42.
PC 2019-42.
The minor subdivision is 2018-1. Thank you, Commissioner Kevin. That's correct, Commissioner Munzer.
2018-6 was a minor subdivision, and then PC resolution is 29.
That's for the next one. That's for the Bright 13 one, I believe. For Felipe 9 is 2018-1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, you're on
Thank
track.
you.
It's just that it's just for Felipe 9.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minor subdivision 2018-1 has been approved. We go to the site and architectural review 2018-2. Motion on that.
I'll make the motion for site and architectural review application number 2018-2, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution,
And that would be 2019-43.
2019-43.
Discussion on that motion? Can I add a condition to screen the HVAC equipment?
Do you want to add that to?
Yes, I want to add that condition.
Can you repeat that one more time, Mr.?
That all the outside HVAC equipment shall be screened.
All outside HVAC equipment shall be screened.
Yes.
So is that being phrased as a friendly amendment to the motion made by Commissioner Stevens?
Yes, I propose an amendment to Commissioner Stevens' motion.
Is that okay?
Acceptable?
Want me to add that? Yes. I mean, should I repeat that or just?
Just accept, if you
Okay,
accept that
I will
to
accept
your
that
amendment.
to
Okay.
the motion.
Is that okay, Mr. City Attorney? Okay.
Do I have a second on that?
Just a second.
I second the motion.
Further discussion on the motion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Site and Architectural Review 2018-2 has been approved. Congratulations. Now we go to item number 3, Minor Subdivision 2018-6 and Site and Architectural Review 2018-23. Right 13 LLC. The applicant is requesting a minor subdivision approval to subdivide a 13.19 acre parcel into 4 lots consisting of 4.25 acres, 4.01 acres, 4.07 acres, and 0.86 acres. The applicant is also requesting a site and architectural approval to construct approximately 340,000 square feet of indoor greenhouse buildings for a cannabis cultivation facility on existing agricultural land, including on-site parking and all utility connections, drainage and landscape improvements. The applicant is also requesting approval of a mitigated negative declaration and mitigated monitoring and reporting program prepared for this project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. The project site is located at Wright Road and San Felipe Road in the North Gateway zoning district. The location is further identified as San Benito County Assessor's parcel number 053-350-005. CEQA is mitigated negative declaration.
Yes.
Abraham?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Good evening once again. The applicant, as you mentioned, is requesting, again, 3 separate resolution approvals. One would be for a minor subdivision, the other would be for a site and architectural, and the third would be for a mitigated negative declaration, along with the mitigation monitoring and reporting program to ensure that the mitigation measures are being applied pending your approval. The property is situated north of Wright Road, approximately 250 feet away to the west of San Felipe, of the intersection with San Felipe Road, and approximately 400 feet away with the intersection of Highway 25 bypass. The minor subdivision, as indicated in the screen and in your plans, consists of the subdivision of one parcel consisting of 13.19 acres into 4 lots. One to approximately 4.25 acres, another lot approximately 4.05 acres, third lot approximately 4.07 acres, and a fourth lot approximately 0.86 acres. The site and architectural that's involved in this application item is for the construction of approximately 340,000 square feet of indoor greenhouse buildings for a cannabis cultivation facility. And the applicant is also requesting approval of a resolution adopting a mitigated negative declaration and monitoring and reporting program pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, known as CEQA, that was prepared for the project. We do want to indicate that the mitigated neg deck was circulated to all the responsible agencies from by the City of Hollister and to the public from December 28th, 2018 all the way through January 28th, 2019. And the City of Hollister received 5 letters from state and local agencies. Again, we want to emphasize, it's really important, for us to emphasize that formal written responses to comments on an M&D are not required by CEQA. However, in the interest of full disclosure and cooperation with responsible agencies and the public, responses are addressed and attached as part of the record. In addition to the letters and comments received, the City of Hollister received a letter from the State Clearinghouse dated January 29th, 2019, indicating that the City of Hollister has complied with the State Clearinghouse review requirements pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. As indicated, the project is situated approximately 250 feet from the intersection of San Felipe Road and approximately 400 feet from the intersection of Highway 25 bypass. The Highway 25. Row crops currently exist to the north of the site, to the west of the site, and to the south of the site. To the east, there is a 3.1 acre lot or parcel with an existing building currently owned by the Northwest Packing, which is the same owner as the existing tomato cannery in our downtown. And there is also existing outdoor storage of tanks used for propane gas by the Dassos Petroleum site. The site would have two driveways along Wright Road, one on the west end of the site and the other on the east end of the site. Staff would like the record to show that the proposed approximately it's approximately 326 foot in length driveway to San Felipe Road and approximately 30 feet wide. It's indicated in your plans. It's up on the screen, but we wanted the record to show that this road was actually going to be used by the tenants only and only as a right in, right out on San Felipe Road. And at this point, and as an emergency access only. But at this point, the applicant is no longer proposing this road. Do want to mention that there is an item that's coming up soon in this agenda that's going to deal with the property to the north regarding the pre-zoning of the property. And at that point, pending pre-zone and annexation of the property to the north, and the bringing it back for a Saturn architecture for the same or similar use, at that point is where the applicant has indicated that we would likely bring it back for your review. But at this point, that's want to let the record show that that road is no longer proposed to the site, and in discussions with the city, particularly fire department, the access along Wright Road, the two different accesses along Wright Road, substantially comply with circulation, and it would be fine to keep those. Also, parking would be located along the east side of parcels A and parcels B, and also parking would be required along the south side of parcel C. Into the details of the subdivision, parcel A consists of 4.25 acres, and of that, approximately 2.93 acres, close to 3 acres of that, is proposed to be for greenhouses. Also, parcel B proposes is going to be approximately 4.01 acres in size, and approximately 2.56 acres are being proposed for greenhouse buildings. Parcel C is proposed to be 4.07 acres in size, and it would have a frontage of 253.50 feet of linear frontage along Wright Road. And the majority of that will be also for greenhouse buildings on the site. Parcel D is a smaller parcel, and that's going to be for stormwater detention in compliance with the local ordinance and State Regional Water Quality Control Board. And again, we want to make emphasis that there is a condition of approval that indicates that the conceptual grading and drainage plan for the basin is designed to not hold standing water after storm events so as to not attract birds, and that the basin pumps shall be sized and programmed accordingly to drain within 24 hours. And again, that would be at the discretion of the city engineer to make sure that that whatever's proposed or submitted to the city engineer, that meets the requirements. Otherwise, city engineer has the discretion to make that into a required underground chamber to meet the requirements. Thank you, Danny. Similar to the Felipe 9 project previously discussed, the site would contain approximately 220,000 square feet of indoor greenhouse buildings for cannabis cultivation. The greenhouses would have a polycarbonate exterior, opaque white color, and again, no hoop houses would be allowed on the site. The greenhouse would have ridge vents on the roof, which would be opened if air is needed to escape. The greenhouses would be secured on a foundation, and the plans also propose some corrugated metal siding, which again, we would prefer that to be a different type of material for aesthetic purposes. And I stand corrected, it's actually not 220,000, it's closer to 300,000 square feet of greenhouse buildings. This site is also going to be 24 hours, 3 shifts, approximately 24 employees per shift, and the peak hour traffic, as discussed with Felipe 9, is normally from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the mornings, 2:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. in the afternoons, and part of the mitigative neg deck discusses the traffic, and this also has a mitigation measure that includes that the shifts would be staggered to offset from the recognized peak hours for traffic. One shift would be from noon to 8, another shift would be from 8 to 4, and a third shift would be from 4 a.m. to noon. And no employee peak hour trip to and from work would occur during those times. Delivery and product transportation, per the mitigative negative declaration, 28 to 30 vehicle trips in a 24-hour period are anticipated, and all delivery and product transportation will be restricted to the hours that are mostly outside of peak hours, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. The landscaping also consists of approximately 8% of the total site, which would consist of 49 trees comprising of fruitless olive trees as proposed, also holy oak and sweet bay, over 200 low shrubs consisting of French lavender and others as well. And the proposed conceptual landscape plan, as seen on the screen and on sheet L 1.1 of the plan set, indicates that there would be 20 trees along Wright Road, and there would be an actual barrier barrier from Wright Road to the actual warehouse or the cannabis buildings of landscaping with trees and shrubs that would serve as that barrier. Additional trees would be placed along all the other property lines to the north and to the east as well. A proposed 8% landscape site meets and exceeds the 5% minimum landscape requirement in the North Gateway District per section 1708-020 of the Hollister Municipal Code. Similar to Felipe 9, the same mitigation measure was placed on this particular project due to the proximity to the airport. This site is actually closer than the Felipe 9 project. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's more of a safety issue. That depends more on the runway location, which is more towards the east. And so therefore staff is asking for the same change on mitigation measure. In this case is mitigation measure 5 to basically change the indication of roofing material shall be toned or matted to prevent reflective glare to buildings / roofing materials along with building orientation shall be submitted to the Airport Land Use Commission and the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure compliance with the reflective glare standards. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the applicant's request, receive all written and oral testimony regarding the proposal, and approve the following. Number 1, the mitigative and negative declaration with the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program with the amendment to Mitigation Measure 5, as stated. Number 2, the minor subdivision 2018-6. This one's the one that was discussed earlier. This one's the one that's 2018-6, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. And number 3, Saturn Architectural Review application number 2018-23, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. Are there any questions for staff?
Any questions for staff on the report? Thank you, Abraham.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
What was the comment about the siding? It was corrugated and it was going to be changed. I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Henderson. So the comment is similar to the Felipe 9, where the part of the mostly the greenhouses are going to be polycarbonate, but partially there will be some areas that would be the proposed plans indicate corrugated metal, and so staff in discussions with in our development review committee thought that instead of being corrugated metal, that it should be a stronger type of material. Aesthetically, the corrugated metal may not necessarily look as pleasing as either like a concrete tilt-up or more of a flat panel type of exterior. So therefore, we're open to options, and we discussed that with the applicant as well. And we came to the conclusion that as long as it's not a corrugated metal, they can provide us with different options in regards to the exterior that can satisfy that condition that was discussed by staff at our development review committee.
Just a comment on that, on
Yeah.
the corrugated metal.
Yeah.
You'll find that in a lot of modern architecture, there is, you'll find it's relatively prevalent in modern architecture, corrugated metal, just as a general comment.
Very well.
This kind of adds a little bit of visual interest, but I can understand. I think it's kind of an industrial, kind of the metal building kind of look that you're
Right.
trying to avoid.
Right.
Okay.
That's pretty much what it is. You got it. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
But when it's used tastefully, it does add some visual interest.
Yes, I would agree.
Any other questions on the report? I will now open the public hearing at 11 minutes to 8. Speakers on this item?
Yes, Gary Coates.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Gary Coates again. I won't go through all what we've all gone through on the previous because it's all applicable to this. There is one thing that I did want to request of you that we were just talking now, and on the landscape plan, if you might bring up that. On the landscape plan on the eastern boundary, which is on the right side of that drawing, yes, the trees that we have proposed there, we'd like to request that those trees be removed. In other words, we do not plant trees, and there's two reasons. One, there's this storm drainage ditch, which runs down that area that also helps services the property next door to us. And secondly, we have the building there. There's a large building there now that's a warehouse building that is located there that we don't want to put trees that will eventually create possible leaves, et cetera, that would go into the the scutters and all of the drainage systems on top of the roof. So we'd like to take the trees out. We'll produce some shrubbery planting along there to help that, but we'd like to just take the trees out in that one area, and that's something staff did not know about. We just literally were talking about it right now as to the potential issue there. So that would be the only change that we would request of the commission and staff as to whether that's acceptable to them. Everything else, we concur. We've all gone through it. We're happy to comply. We will continue to work on all the systems as we've discussed previously and work with your staff to do that. So we're happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, you or the commission may have.
Any questions for Mr. Coates?
Could you explain the drainage ditch you were referring to? I
Yes,
didn't quite-
there is a drainage ditch where those trees are on the right-hand side, right there, right where the arrow is. There's a drainage ditch that runs all the way down there, and it bows out a bit, as you can see it, right? See how it kind of views out to the further the east, down to the bottom of the map, right there, and then it goes to the right. And so it handles drainage in that area, and so we don't want to deter from anyone else who's had drainage in that area, and those trees with roots with other things may create problems. So we can do some low shrubbery planting and things like that to help, but we're just screening the back of a building, and we don't want to again create that problem for drainage for them on their building. So that was the reasoning behind it.
Okay. Drought tolerant shrubbery, right?
Yeah, oh yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
And then, can we also note it, like for the last property, the trees, non-flowering trees,
Right.
No nut trees, just to be, for that.
We'd be happy to do that, yes. That's a very good point. It's something we had not thought about, and yes, we don't want to
You mentioned
impact
the
our neighbors.
fruitless olive trees, right? Isn't that?
Yeah,
Yeah, these are
they're
fruitless
proposed
olive
to
trees.
be fruitless.
But again, we'll work with your staff. If there's other acceptable varieties, we're happy to do that.
Absolutely, and we can work with, if it's a desire of the commission, we can work with the applicant in regards to the trees not being on the west property or the east property line, and still make sure that they meet that minimum 5% landscape with other types of shrubbery material. That's fine. If
I was not aware of fruitless olive trees. I know the Russian olive trees, they leave a mess.
Yeah, they do.
But I'll take your word for it on fruitless olive trees.
Very
Okay.
well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item?
That's it.
That's it? I'll close the public hearing now at 9 minutes to 8. So our first item, subject to the Planning Commission's discretion, is the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigated monitoring system.
That's
Am I
correct.
correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Do I have a motion on that?
I make a motion to, a resolution adopting the mitigative negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program with the amendment to mitigation measure 5 as stated.
Very well.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mitigated negative declaration and mitigated monitoring system. Component of this project has been approved.
Thank you.
Now we are looking at the minor subdivision 2018-6. Commissioner Munzer.
I'm sorry.
It's getting late. You're big. I fell for it.
I'll make the motion for approval of minor subdivision number 2018-6, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution, PC resolution
2019.
2019-45.
Yes.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minor subdivision 2018-6 has been approved. Now we go to site and architectural review 2018-23. Entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion on the site and architectural review application number 2018-23, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution, PC
2019-46.
2019-46.
Yes.
I
thanks.
propose a friendly amendment to that motion to add a condition to screen any HVAC, outside HVAC equipment, as in our item number 2. Be consistent.
Very well.
Okay,
Is that
yeah.
acceptable,
Well,
Commissioner
that's good,
Stevens?
yeah. We'll
Thank
accept
you.
that for the amendment.
I second the motion.
Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. The site and architectural review 2018-23 has been approved. Congratulations.
And we'll put on the minutes that the staff will work with the applicant regarding the trees on the east elevation to provide some shrubbery or something that would also still continue to meet that 5% minimum requirement for landscape.
Thank you, Abraham.
Thank you.
We move to item number 4, Planning Commission recommendation to the City Council for a mitigated negative declaration in pre-zone 2018-6. Coates Consulting / Geary Coates / Briggs 17 LLC. The applicant is requesting Planning Commission recommendation to the City of Hollister City Council for the pre-zone for annexation of one parcel of approximately 13.48 acres to the North Gateway zoning district in the City of Hollister and the adoption of a mitigated negative declaration. Annexation will require approval by the San Benito County LAFCO. The project site is located west of San Felipe Road, north of Wright Road, and south of Flynn Road. The property is located within the City of Hollister's sphere of influence. The property is further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 019-090-026 CEQA Mitigated Negative Declaration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
The applicant is requesting the pre-zoning of a property consisting of 13.48 acres of land in the North Gateway zoning district for annexation. The property is located west of San Felipe Road, as you indicated, and north of Wright Road, also to the south of Flynn Road. Property is located within the city's sphere of influence and the city's planning area. The general plan designation of the project site is for the county of San Benito is currently agriculture, but it is within our general plan's planning area, North Gateway general plan land use. The City Council of the City of Hollister authorized the initiation of the application for pre-zone of this property on January 16, 2018 at its regular meeting by a unanimous vote. So the first part of as indicated in the staff report, the first part to initiate annexations is essentially to go before the City Council and indicate to the City Council that the party is interested in annexing the property, and before moving forward with any type of environmental document, any type of further plan for services, the applicant would first have to have at least a not a unanimous, but a majority vote to basically allow for the initiation of pre-zoning to take its course. And in this case, it was a unanimous vote by the City Council per Resolution 2018-16 for the applicant to move forward with the pre-zoning. And with that, the applicant started the mitigated negative declaration process pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. Do want to indicate that as part of our due diligence to make sure that a property is should be considered for annexation, staff does look at the ability for that property to be able to be served by existing utilities. And so there is an existing 12-inch water main along San Felipe Road, which can be accessed for future development of the parcel. Also, the nearest points of the city's sewer main is along San Felipe Road frontage. The sanitary sewer connection is that exists is a 10-inch in diameter main, and the sewer main would be extended to access the subject parcel when needed and if approved by the recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by the City Council and LAFCO. Pending pre-zoning approval, the City Council will be asked to prepare a resolution requesting that the Local Agency Formation Commission, otherwise known as LAFCO, initiate proceedings for annexations of the property. But first, we have to bring it to you formally for a formal approval of a resolution to recommend the pre-zone to the City Council for approval. And in this case, the Planning Commission has the authority to approve mitigated negative declarations, as you did for the previous projects. However, because the pre-zoning is being recommended to the City Council, we normally ask that instead of having you approve it, have you recommend it to the City Council, so that way they can make that decision with your support, obviously, because we will be asking for your recommendation for that approval. The CEQA document that was also circulated to our responsible agencies and the local and the public as well, also because of the proximity to the airport, had the same mitigation measure, which indicates roofing material should be toned or matted to prevent reflective glare. And so we want the record to show that we would also ask that with your recommendation to the City Council, that the mitigation measure be updated to indicate building/roofing materials along with building orientation shall be submitted to the Airport Land Use Commission and the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure compliance with reflective glare standards, pending approval of the pre-zone and pending annexation by LAFCO. At that point, the applicant can then come in and submit a site and architectural and or if they wish a minor subdivision or major subdivision, depending on the nature of the business, to bring before the Planning Commission. At which time you will have that discretion. But at this point, is solely the recommendation to the City Council for the approval of the mitigated negative declaration pursuant to CEQA, and recommendation to City Council for the approval of the pre-zone. So with that, staff will be happy to take any questions, and as you know, the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Questions?
I just want to state that, like I said I forgot to say it on the last one too, that I met with the applicants for both this one
Great.
and, I'm sorry, for item number 4 and item number 3.
Okay,
Just wanted
good.
that stated.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So my question is around the statement within the staff report that talks about fiscal neutrality.
Yeah.
So I just want to get a better understanding of how we determine neutrality, right?
Sure.
And how do we get to that point? I mean, I think there's a lot of things that I think the thing that concerns me about that is in the future.
Right.
So how do we know that what we're collecting in taxes and other revenue will cover the costs related to, the costs that could impact the city later?
Right.
So how do we know that we've met that threshold for being neutral?
That's a really good question, Commissioner Roxanne, and I do want to start by saying that there cannot be any annexations into the city of Hollister unless there is an existing agreement between the city of Hollister and the county of San Benito, where that transaction of land on that annexation is going to take place. Our current property tax exchange agreement between the city of Hollister and the county of San Benito was adopted. It has to be adopted by both the city council and then by the county of San Benito, and our existing one was adopted in 2011. I think it was in June, and it expires in January of 2020. So it's set to expire pretty soon. And right now, the details in the property tax exchange agreement, and we can send it to you as well, so you can have that. But the details, essentially, it indicates that the city of Hollister would have a portion of the property taxes, and the county would have another portion of the property taxes. The exact number I don't have, but I know that right now, as it is, the county takes the majority of that split, and that's a minimal split, because the majority goes to the state, and then the minimal that stays local, the majority goes to the county, and then there's a minor portion that goes to the city. I want to say it's like a 75-25% or so. In addition to that, for residential, for each residential unit that's built that was annexed recently, there's an additional cost, quote unquote, that's stipulated on the property tax. This is not going to be residential. This is commercial, so it wouldn't apply. But the stipulation currently says an additional $9,500 plus an inflator would go for each unit to the county. So that's the current fiscal neutrality property tax exchange agreement that's in place. Right now, it's my understanding that there is an ad hoc committee that was formed by the city council, where there's 2 members of the city council working along with 2 members of the board of supervisors to try to see if they can come up with an updated property tax exchange agreement now that the current one is set to expire in 2020. And at that point, all of those measures regarding fiscal neutrality would be handled. I know that as part of, when it comes to residential, one of the things that's added into that is that we want to make sure that we incorporate the communities facilities districts that would pay, for example, for police and fire, and also maintenance of roads, landscaping, lighting, maintenance of sound walls, and so forth. But in this case, at this point, we don't have community facilities districts for commercial. That's one thing that we're trying to work with our consultants that help us prepare the CFDs or community facilities districts to see if we can apply it to commercial as well. But the details in regards to the fiscal neutrality, I think will come pending that new what the ad hoc committee is working with along with the board of supervisors at this time. I'm not sure if Brian or Jason may have any additional information when it comes to that, but that's the latest information that I have heard of regarding that neutrality.
Okay, so that helps me in the revenue side,
Right.
but it doesn't really help in the cost side. So how do is there a formula? Is there
Yeah.
a list of factors that we take into consideration in terms of the cost side? And is the neutrality based on adding no additional cost to the city, or is it based on what we would already expect a cost to be for a similar kind of structure or development? So what's the neutrality based on, and so what are we trying to reach here? I mean, and the reason that I'm raising that question is there's always a concern that we're going to increase the cost to the city, and we don't. And I think the goal is not to do that. If we're going to annex, we're going to add something to the city, then let's not add some financial responsibility that maybe we can't afford, and make a good decision about what's going to happen in the future. So the issue of neutrality then is it we're not adding costs, or is it that we're just going to be meeting whatever threshold we have now or standard that we have now for other similar type of development?
Yeah, so I think the fiscal neutrality situation is more geared towards the housing that's being annexed and the differences between the city and the county. But in this instance, it is to the city's best interest to annex this property because it's going to produce a revenue for us. So I would rather have the revenue for the city of Hollister rather than the county of San Benito. So it's good to have this within our confines with the city. So when we have a residential subdivision that annexes into the city, as Abraham stated, we have a CFD that offsets the cost for police and fire services. And in this instance, that's going to be offset by the amount of revenue that the business will propose or will create for the city. So the fiscal neutrality is a little bit more confusing with residential properties, not so much for commercial, because we're seeing a greater benefit as to what the revenues may create from this project. So.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I'm just still curious about, is there a formula that we use when we're deciding whether we've reached fiscal neutrality? Or is there a document that describes in detail what we consider when we're deciding that? And I think this goes back to some of the things that I talked about earlier about like wanting to be have a better understanding of some of the concepts and some of the terms that we talk about. That's one of the areas. I know that there's a lot of things that could come into play when you're considering any kind of decision, or any kind of determination of fiscal neutrality. Some things can be left off, some things can be added on. It can be compared to one thing or another. So I'm just wondering whether we have a formula, we have something that exists, or is there another way for me to have a better understanding of what that is?
I think coming to the city council meetings and listening to the council or watching it on TV will give you a better understanding, as Abraham stated, as these ad hoc committees move forward and the city and the county work together. I think you'll be able to see what that document's going to look like eventually, and how the city and the county will work together on an even fee that benefits both the city and the county.
Okay,
so
then what I'm hearing you say, Brian, is that the end product or the deliverable from that ad hoc committee is that there will be some kind of document that shows what that formula is, or what's
absolutely
the consideration around fiscal neutrality.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, it's a valid questions to ask. I mean, it's something that's been an issue for quite some time. So, but I'll be honest with you, with commercial properties, we always want to bring them into the city of Hollister.
Right.
No offense to the county
No,
of San
I
Benito,
agree.
I want them
I
to
agree.
prosper, but we need to have the revenue here in the
I
city.
agree.
So
I agree,
yeah.
but when you start talking about just fiscal neutrality in general, then I think it's important for us to understand what we're talking about, and I agree that will,
Yeah.
hopefully it'll bring more revenue.
Yep.
And we hope that it doesn't add more costs, but I think it's something that we should have standardized, and so we can understand it better.
Totally understand. Yeah, when it comes to homes, the city, it's pennies really on the dollar sometimes with revenue in terms of property taxes. What we get with a home is people that hopefully are shopping within the community, and that's about it. And so the annexation is a little bit more different with annexing homes. There's a little bit more to talk about. But with commercial properties, we're hoping that the investment that the Orozco Group is making here and their future tenants will be rock stars for the city. So,
You mentioned the commercial. Is this zone commercial or AP?
This is North Gateway commercial.
yeah, when I say a commercial,
Thank you.
it's a commercial type use that's going to be producing revenue for the city. So.
I appreciate those questions. When we get into housing developments, could be a ongoing conversation for sure for annexation. Any other questions? Okay, I will open up the public hearing now at 12 after 8. Any speakers on this item?
Are there any speakers, Brian?
We have no speakers, except for Gary Coates.
That's no speakers. I couldn't agree more. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
You're welcome.
Your staff has done an excellent job. We're in that position. I did want to, if I can, Commissioner Stevens, who asked the question with respect to economic neutrality, to give you a very simple answer, there is a formula that is available that is used by the statewide formula system that's called dollars and cents of evaluation. And it's a process by which, if you have a certain kind of use, it will tell you how many services you can anticipate to be provided. If it's residential, as Brian has mentioned, you've got social services, schools, libraries. You have a lot of different things that go into it, much more costly. And the revenue share with the share of property tax is very minimal. So you don't get a lot, but you get it then through sales tax and other things by the rooftops. So, but when you get into this kind of a use, this is even in the non-residential, which is referred to as commercial/industrial. When you get into that benefit package that occurs, this has a whole separate taxation program which other commercial uses do not have, and that is a cannabis tax. That cannabis tax that comes into the city far exceeds any cost of service. The state mandated requirements of services for police, as an example. We are required to have certain security on site and different types of programs set up, which then alleviates the police department of having to provide those kinds of services. We provide them ourselves on site and then electronically connect up the police department with those provisions. So it isn't just a simple answer of you take 5.3 and multiply it times this and there's your answer. It is more complicated, but as your staff has said, in this situation, because of the cannabis, because of the maximum amount of services that we have to provide ourselves, especially when you look at a large project. If you had little small ones, much more costly because there's all the independent services have to be provided. One larger project, you're dealing with one large user, so it's one access, one contact. So in this case, your economic neutrality, this project would far exceed the positive aspects of economic neutrality when you go into and look at how it benefits the city. So hopefully that gives you a little more information on it. I'd be happy to provide you the information on where that formula, the booklet is, so that you can see that for yourself, and it kind of gives you a guide to go through.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. But when you're talking about concepts around neutrality, it's always a comparison.
Yeah.
Right? So even if
Yep.
the revenues go up, we still want to control the costs, right? So I think that's more of a city problem,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like for us, it's not your problem, it's our
Right.
problem to resolve.
Yeah.
But I would appreciate anything that you can provide.
I'd be happy to do it,
Sure.
but your assessment, absolutely correct. We hopefully become part, in our case, we're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And so, from that point, I'll give you what I have information on that. And the League of California Cities has some documents as well, so I can give you those as well. You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You're welcome. Daniel?
Patrick Roscoe. I'm gonna.
Or Patrick?
I'm gonna. There's an unspoken rule that when things are going well, don't talk too much. So I'm gonna break that one. Because it's rare that there's an opportunity to talk to all of you at once without violating the Brown Act. First and foremost, I just want to echo what Gary said. You don't know how good your staff is. We are active in numerous cities across the state and across numerous states in the U.S. We have had an exceptional experience with these individuals here. They're thorough, professional, accessible, which is very rare, and very fair. And that's something that I think is very, commendable in this day and age, where public-private partnerships really tend to break down. And so I would be, doing them a disservice not to compliment all of them, Maria included. We, as a preface, 2.5 years ago, surveyed every 58 counties to determine which county had the attributes that would most be fitting of a long-term investment, specifically with respect to how you're addressing the cannabis ordinance, and feel that the conclusions that your staff reached were really second to none in the state. So with that, but my primary reason for getting up here is the central issue of revenue positive or negative. My business is, always been one of economic development. And the one thing that I would like to toot my own horn about, or our own horn about, with respect to this prospective projects, is the scale of the project is vastly different than what you've been presented with anywhere else in town, inclusive of the project that was proposed north of the airport, where there's a large-scale subdivision. We're talking about large-scale operators that will effectively be the Google, the Apple, the Taylor Farms, the Driscoll Farms of this particular industry. And my goal is to land Costco, if you will, to carry that analogy. It's a very competitive landscape, and carrying it back to the work of your staff, it's only through the negotiations that take place with an open receptiveness to the challenges the business community face that we are able to land at mitigation measures that unfortunately mean that sometimes we have to have a special meeting that gets canceled. So I apologize for that. But getting this right so that it can survive us over many decades has been very important. All that being said, our goal is to not only generate, increase in AV and cannabis tax, but to secure long-standing, reliable salaries that are, well-paying jobs, pay mortgages, and bring people to hotels and put people in restaurants. So, all that being said, I just want to thank you very much for, your endorsement and the mass amount of time that your staff has made available to us.
Thank you, Patrick. And I appreciate those kind words on behalf of staff. And I concur with those words of praise for our staff, definitely. Okay. Any other speakers on this item? I will close the public hearing now at 20 minutes after 8. Just a couple of things I want to share with the people in the audience and also fellow commissioners and the general public. is a couple things that I had a concern about that's pretty well addressed in the mitigated negative declaration. And one that I just recently looked up is regarding the odor issue, is that, and I'll just read the essential part of it, is that they talk about the odor issue with marijuana plants and products. And per the city's ordinance, each of the applicants/licensees would be required to prepare an odor management plan detailing steps that will be taken to ensure that odor of marijuana will not emanate beyond the exterior walls of the facility, including, as necessary, the installation and use of air purification systems and/or air scrubbers. And it goes on to explain a little bit more of that in detail. The other issue that I initially wanted to do some research on is the water issue with all the greenhouses. And on table 7 of the mitigated negative declaration, I think it really does address the availability of the water and as the water supply as versus the water demand. And it goes into not only where we get our water from the San Justo Reservoir, but all the steps that we've taken with groundwater, treatment and the less salt plant. And we're in pretty good shape according to the mitigated negative declaration. So if you look at table 7, page 2-73, I think it really does a good job explaining that. The other thing that, just as a general comment about legalizing cannabis greenhouses and cultivation, if you look at it as controlling it as versus environmental impacts for illegal cannabis cultivation, I've done a lot of research on that. If you look at illegal cannabis cultivation, you're talking about severe environmental impacts with pesticides, synthetic herbicides, rodenticides. I mean, it's just staggering. So, I mean, I'm glad to see that we're taking legal cannabis cultivation under the cloak of our environmental laws and our city codes and development regulations. And I think that's the way to go. That's my take on it. Any other comments on this pre-zone? What's the pleasure of the Planning Commission on this item? Looking at recommendation to the City Council for a mitigated negative declaration in pre-zone 2018-6. I entertain a motion.
And that'll be two different resolutions. One for the mitigative neg deck, as you mentioned, with the amendment to the mitigation regarding glare, and the other would be for the recommendation of the pre-zone.
So the two motions.
Yes.
Start with the mitigated negative declaration.
I'll make a motion for a resolution recommending to the City Council the adoption of the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program with the amendment to mitigation measure 8 as stated.
I'll second.
Further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The mitigated negative declaration and mitigated monitoring has been approved. Now I entertain a motion for the pre-zone recommendation of the City Council. I'll make that motion. I'll move that we recommend to adopt resolution number, is there a resolution on this?
2019-48.
2019-48?
48. 48.
48?
Yes.
40.
Sorry. That
48. Had a senior moment there.
No.
48, and
David.
recommend that we move this pre-zone application to the City Council for approval.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The pre-zone recommendation has been approved. Congratulations. Okay, we go on to item number 5. Moving right along here. Conditional use permit number 2019-7. Mark Prater. The applicant is requesting conditional use permit approval for the use of a martial arts academy within a 3,420 square foot tenant space of an existing building located at 817 Industrial Drive. The project is located in the M1 Light Industrial Zoning District, and proposed use is a commercial use. Therefore, conditional use permit approval is required. The property is further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 056-270-014, CEQA categorically exempt.
Thank you, Chairman. Staff is recommending tonight that the Planning Commission take the following actions. 1, open the public hearing and receive public comment. 2, keep the public hearing open and continue the public hearing for the conditional use permit 2019-7 to the October 24th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, any comments on that request? Well, I will open up the public hearing then at 8:27.
No comment
No
cards.
attendees or
No.
no comments? Everyone has left the building. Except for
Jason,
us.
any comments, Jason? At all, or statements?
Absolutely not.
Any other comments? Okay, so, then, with the consensus of the commission, we'll continue the planning, open hearing, continue it, leave it open until the next regularly scheduled planning commission
Yes.
meeting?
Correct.
Yes, please.
Okay, is that the consensus of the commission?
Did you make that into a motion? Is that what I understood?
All right, we're getting formal now.
It
It's all
sounded like a motion.
right. Do I need to make that as a motion?
Let's please make that as a motion.
I'll make it as a motion that we continue the public hearing and
Keep the
Mm.
public hearing open.
keep it open until October 24th, planning commission meeting, and continue that item until that time. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This item will be continued to the October planning commission meeting. Now, on item number 6, it says here David Huboy. That sounds familiar.
I've heard of the guy. I've heard of him.
Right. So I'm going to
Someone know him.
request that Vice Chair Munster will read that item, and I will recuse myself for reasons that my firm, Huboy Architecture, has provided architectural services for item number 6. So I have to recuse myself due to conflict of interest.
Item number 6, Site and Architectural Review number 2019-6. David Huboy, the applicant, is requesting site and architectural approval to construct 4 3-story, 7,531 square foot apartments. 3 of the buildings will consist of 7 units and 1 building will consist of 4 units. With the first floor being a gym, community room, a lounge area, the project is located on a 49,774 square foot lot at the northwest corner of Ladd Lane and Hillock Drive within the neighborhood mixed-use zoning district, further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 057-230-013, CEQA Mitigated Negative Declaration. Staff?
Yes, thank you. We are also going to be requesting continuance on this item to the October 24th, 2019 meeting. We're dealing with some comments on the project that need to be resolved. So we'll ask that you open the public hearing and then receive public comment and keep the hearing open with a motion for continuance to October 24th.
I will open the public hearing at this time at 8:30. And we will keep the public hearing open. Is there any speaker cards?
None.
If there's no speaker cards, we'll bring this back to make a motion on continuing this item.
I'll make a motion to continue item number 6, the Site and Architectural Review 2019-16 to the October 24th Planning Commission meeting, as well as leaving the public commenting open until that time.
Great, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Should we bring the applicant back?
Yes.
I'm going to hand it back to you.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair Munzer. I appreciate that. Well, I guess that concludes our regular agenda. For the items, we go into new business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no new business from staff.
How about old business? No? No old business?
Nothing.
I'm going to be nice to you guys. I'm not going to bug you about the general plan update. But, I'm sounding like a broken record.
Next month, yeah.
I'm sure you guys are making great progress on that. Yes, I've got a lot of confidence in you now.
Well, I mean, we did bring to the city council EMC, right, Abraham, and as the consultant.
Yeah. And I think we did talk about it a little bit at the last meeting, but yeah, we did. EMC, we did bring it to the council. You know, they're really good. They've done a lot of work for the city of Hollister. They actually finished the general plan for the county a few years ago, but the council wanted to see if we can resend it out again.
Give 'em more time.
Just give them more time.
Right.
Provide more.
Yeah.
More.
Okay, well, we'll keep
Hopefully
our
more
fingers
consultants.
crossed.
Thank you.
Planning Department reports.
I don't think we have anything. No,
None.
we're busy,
Oh yeah.
right? That's a report.
Very much so.
Planning Commission reports. Any reports from my fellow commissioners?
I will report that I did attend the sign ad hoc committee meeting on September 10th, and it's a good meeting, and we discussed the issues of sidewalk signs, neon signs, and I forget there was one other thing, but anyways, it was, what was it? And banners, yeah. So yeah, it was good meeting, and look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kevin.
I too would also like to say that I attended the same ad hoc committee meeting, and I feel we came up with some good ideas that's fair to everybody to help our businesses, because that's what the whole point of downtown is, right? To have business and have people shop. And I think we did a pretty good job of coming up with ideas, you know, talking with you and then talking with the, was the mayor there? I can remember. Roland was there, and with Peter Hernandez, and then some of the other just business owners like the Hollister Downtown Association. And I think it went really well. It was nice to be on that type of a committee to see a different point of view. So.
Thank you,
Was it
Carrie.
well attended by the public? Or business owners?
There was like 2 or 3, I think, 3 business owners. Obviously Ohana, the Downtown Association, and I think there was San Benito, B-E-N-E. I don't know how to pronounce that word, I'm sorry. Benet, okay, so she was there, so.
Right. Well, looking forward to further reports. I'm especially interested on the neon sign component. See what you guys come up with that. Okay. Any other reports? Planning Commission? Seth? Roxanne?
I have no other things,
Anything
items,
contribute?
topics to report on.
Okay. All right. I entertain a motion for adjournment.
I will second that.
Well, I'll make the
Oh.
motion.
Oh,
Okay,
wait.
I'll go ahead and make the motion for adjournment. You a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Okay, we are adjourned.
Yes.
Thank
What?
you.
It is
Yeah.
8:09.
I know, I had a long day today, too. Thank you very much.
So what I'm gonna do is we'll contact Gary, email him or something, see what exactly we want to talk about.
Yeah.
He kept talking about the applicant as a part of it, but I don't know if that helps.
is it husband and wife?